I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, I want to do a blog on what's known as the Tina effect. Tina, there is no alternative. And I continue to see this, and it's been in the news quite a bit lately. On my regular reading of the Wall Street Journal, and Barron's have been talking a lot about this in the stock market. But you can relate this, or transfer this over to the Vancouver real estate market as well, that there is no alternative. Let's start with Vancouver real estate. I've been harping on this for a decade now on my blog here, that some people seem to believe that renting in a city like Vancouver, as expensive as Vancouver is a way better way to go. They'll tell you, don't buy. It's never the right time to buy. Market is just going to start crashing here any day now. Just hold on. Market's going to crash. Some of these guys were getting pretty giddy here back in March and April with the COVID-19. They thought, here's finally what I've been waiting for. A pandemic that's killing hundreds of thousands of people, that will be what brings the Vancouver market down. And of course, it's turned out not to be the case. Because again, Vancouver is just way too popular of a city. We don't build anything in this city. More buyers than there are sellers, and you got 1.99% interest rate. All that really happened during the COVID-19, as I had kind of suspected, and what I blogged about, was that we were going to go into a 6 to 8 week holding pattern. All the listings are going to come off, activity is going to drop off a cliff, and then everything will get pushed back into the summer. Our spring market will be pushed back, and that's so far what's happened. But you ask yourself this when someone tells you don't buy real estate, don't buy, too expensive, market's going to crash. Ask them for me, and let me know on the comment section. I would love to hear some of you guys tell me what your game plan is. I've talked about this many times over the years. What exactly is the alternative? If now isn't the right time to buy your principal residence and hold it for 30 years, which is what you should be doing, take advantage of the 1.99% interest, take advantage of the only tax shelter we get in Canada, the principal residence exemption, where there's no caps on it. You can shelter $4 million if you buy a detached house on the west side over the next 20 years. Tax-free. It's incredible. If it's not the right time now, when is the right time? Because it never is. I've been in this business for 34 years now. And for as long as I've been owning Vancouver real estate and investing in Vancouver real estate, every time I've pulled the trigger on a property over the last 34 years, there's always somebody saying you're nuts to be buying real estate here. The crash is just coming, you're overpaying, interest rates are going to go up, market's going to go down, inventory is going to spike. Vancouver isn't as desirable as it once was. It's not the same city. People are moving out. But thankfully, I never listened to them because, there is no alternative. Ask these people, if now's not the right time to buy, then I'd sure like to know, because I'd like to know. I don't have your magic crystal ball. I just systematically buy. But when is this magic time going to come? I've been hearing this for over 30 years. The other thing you have to remember, if you're living in Vancouver, first off, if you're living at home, that's a little different thing. And I tell people over the years here, milk staying at home as long as you possibly can. If you have to live in your parents' utility shed, go ahead and bank as much money as you can until you have enough money for the down payment. Once you've got the down payment, you've crossed a huge financial hurdle in life. Now your cost to own is going to be about the same as what it is to rent. Plus you're building up all that capital gain. But you have to, people often say, it's renting versus owning, and how renting, they make it sound like renting is some magic utopia, where we've got cheap rents and you can rent luxury condo, a one-bedroom condo for $500. And that's not the case. Renting a basic one-bedroom in downtown Vancouver now is $2,200 a month. Do the math, what you're going to spend over the next 25 or 30 years on rent, and index it to inflation. You're going to spend easily over $1 million, $1.5 million on rent after tax. It makes no sense. And that's the thing that amazes me. These people think it's not the right time to buy. Well, when is going to be the right time to buy? It's never going to be sunshine and roses and all green lights. I can tell you, every property I've bought over the last 33 plus years, there's always been dark clouds on the horizon. I could find 100 people that would say I was crazy to buy. I bought my first condo in Richmond 34 years ago. I think I paid $51,000 for it. They thought I was nuts. 3 years after that, I bought a townhouse in Richmond and I paid $209,000 for it. For a 1,500 square foot townhouse, they thought I was nuts. I bought a 3,400 square foot home 15 years ago and paid $400,000 for it. They thought I was nuts. It's always the same way. The home I'm living in now, downtown Vancouver, that I bought 4 years ago, thought I was nuts buying it then. But it just keeps going up. Not in a straight line. There's always going to be 5, 10, 15% corrections along the way. Those are very normal, as I often say. But ask yourself, what is the alternative? There is no alternative. It's the Tina effect. You either own, you're creating equity two ways, paying down the debt, capital gains, all tax-free, leverage, which I blogged about many times, the power of leverage and how it's really the only way to accumulate any type of real significant wealth. Because leverage allows you to do fourfold with your money. Again, my whole caveat I got to put in there. Do not over leverage yourself, and I'm not telling people to do that. However, with residential real estate in Canada, very difficult to do that through Royal Bank or TD or any of the major lenders. They will not let you over leverage. Not with the stress test and all the hoops they're going to make you jump through, and you're going to have to do a conventional mortgage in Vancouver. 20%, 25% down. But that's the big hurdle. Once you get that 25% down, it is smooth sailing after that. There is no alternative. Anyone that doesn't want to listen to that and take that in, I've talked about it many times, just doesn't want to do the mirror test. And I've realized a long time ago that some people were never going to reach here. I always do this kind of positive affirmation for my loyal followers here. And I'm always looking to convert some people from the dark side. But look at this as positive affirmation that you're doing the right thing, saving for the down payment and becoming a principal residence owner. You know, I go occasionally onto the Globe and Mail and Vancouver Sun. Look at some of the comments in there. There's always some really telling comments by some people that will, of course, they're complaining about the prices and the fear of missing out, and it's the foreign buyers and all that other crap. You'll always get a couple of old timers that'll go on that blog, pretty wise guys, you know, smart. And they will go in there with some words of wisdom for these young whippersnappers that the world is falling apart and it's all rigged against us, can't get ahead. They will come in with their words of wisdom, and it's totally true. It was the same for these guys 30 years ago. The world was falling apart. Real estate's too expensive. Don't buy, rent. And these guys will tell stories about how they didn't listen. They saved their money. They worked a side job. They made sacrifices. No Canucks games. No eating out. They did that for 5 years, saved the money for the down payment and bought their first home, and they've never looked back. I was in the Vancouver Sun a couple days ago, and there was a couple of guys in there that had some good stories. There always is, mixed in with the 90% that are haters, envious, jealous, bitter, mad at the world types. Because that's why they're in that position. They spend all their time complaining. But every now and again, you'll get a guy that'll come in there with some words of wisdom. He's probably an older guy. These are the guys you should be learning from and listening to. Because nothing has changed. Everyone will often say, oh, when you had it so easy when you started 33 years ago. No, I didn't. It was the exact same dark clouds. I started when interest rates were at 15%. Sure, prices were cheap, way less, but interest rates were tenfold what they are now. For every $1,000 I made on a mortgage payment, $950 was going to interest, for God's sake. Now take a look at what it is at 1.99. For every $1,000 you're paying now, you're doing tremendous damage to the principal. You throw in the internet, side hustles, ways to make money passively that I didn't have 30 years ago. It's a gravy train we've got now. Sorry to tell some of you guys that are struggling. If you're struggling, it's you. You got to change your attitude. You got to get positive and look for opportunities because they're out there. I'm working with these young buyers, young women, young men every single month in my business that had no help from mom and dad. They've buckled down, made the sacrifices, and they're getting into their first property, and they're never going to look back after that. Once you're in, it's smooth sailing because now you're riding the market up. You keep saving your money. If you have to sell that property to move up to a bigger and better one, so be it. That's a good way to go. It's the exact same thing, just finishing with the Tina effect in the stock market. Look at the sell-off we had in March and early April. And I had some guys commenting on my YouTube channel here. One guy had to remind some people that Owen would have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss on his portfolio, and I did. This guy recognized that. I mean, just to put it into perspective, this was some of the most violent sell-off I have ever seen. I have never seen anything like this, what we went through in some of the trading days between mid-March to mid-April. We had some days where the S&P 500 were down 7-8%. That is unheard of for a large cap index like that. You might get that in speculative stocks. I mean, I had days where my portfolio was down easily into six figures in a 24-hour period. But you looked at the sharp recovery we had, which was nobody saw coming. I still think we're going to be in for some choppy waters all through the summer and the fall. We're not out of this yet. There's more down days, and there'll be more rips up too. I'm using the down days to top up on any stocks I can if I've got the money. But the reason that sharp increase we had is, it's the old saying, don't fight the Fed. And again, there is no alternative. Going in cash for long periods of time is a recipe for disaster. You're losing money on cash. And when you can buy good quality companies like a Apple or a Procter & Gamble or a Johnson & Johnson, when they went on the dip and they were yielding 4 and 5%, and you look at what you're going to earn in cash at 0.5% interest rates, again, there is no alternative. It's the Tina effect. Especially if you're an investor. I'm an investor. I'm not a speculator, and that's the thing people need to remember. When I'm buying shares in Apple and Home Depot and Costco, Bell Canada, TELUS, Royal Bank, McCormick, Starbucks, I'm not buying these with a trader mentality. I'm not looking to buy them and then sell them next week. I'm buying them, tucking them away for 15, 20, 30 years. I may never sell some of these shares. I might not, hopefully I won't have to, because I've structured my portfolio in a way that it's big enough. I've built it up year by year over the last 3 decades, where it's spinning off a great deal of cash for me in the form of quarterly dividend checks. And that's when you're really living and really cooking, when you never have to sell a share and you can just live off the dividend streams. Now, it's a 30-year process though. It's not going to come overnight. There's no shortcuts with this, as I talk about it in my book. You got to take baby steps with this, but it is the surefire way to creating wealth. Same thing in real estate. You buy your principal residence, you keep it. Save your money. Max out your RSP and your TFSA. Buy an investment property. Put a tenant in it. Just slow and methodical. That's the only advantage you have as an investor. I could, as you guys know, I've got a number of mentors, including some large private equity guys, money managers in New York, and they have always pounded home to me, you just use the one advantage you've got, Owen, and that is to buy quality assets, real estate and stock, and hold them. Monitor them, because every now and again a company goes bad and you got to sell it. It's rare for me, because I can count on one hand the number of companies that I've had to sell over the years. GE is probably the only one in the last 5 years. The rest I've hung on to, because they're good quality companies with huge cash flows, competitive moats, and everything else. That's the advantage we have. When people say the stock market's rigged, well, it's always because they got into some sort of a trading mentality, a speculator. They're buying speculative stocks or they're trading stock, and that is a recipe to lose all your money. Guaranteed. It might take you 6 months, might take 5 years. Eventually Wall Street will take all your money in that. You're not smart enough. Not when the best of the best on Wall Street, like my friends, are maybe right 55 to 60% of the time. They're the best of the best. So remember that. The only advantage you do have is to simply buy and hold and tune out all the noise and short-term stuff. Final thing, I'll just tell you that talking to a couple of colleagues of mine, and we were kind of talking about some of these guys in Vancouver real estate here, and we also brushed on some of these bears in the stock market. Eventually these people, they just won't change. They're like a dog with a bone. They won't give it up. And they continue to focus on the short-term value of Vancouver real estate. It's always a correction or a bubble just around the corner. It's fear of missing out. They've always got an excuse to why the market continues on a pretty solid run here. There's always going to be corrections along the way. Remember that. Markets aren't perfect. Vancouver real estate has a lot of stuff wrong with it. That's just every market does. And we could have a 15% correction here over the next 18 months in Vancouver condos here. I don't know. It's very likely. We should get one every 3 to 5 years. But so many of these people, they become so wrapped up in the doom and gloom and the negative narrative, and they cherry pick all this stuff, it becomes them. They just won't give it up. Even when the circumstances change, and if you ask them about the long-term value of owning and holding real estate, they just revert it back to something short-term, which isn't how real estate or investing or saving for your retirement works. It's a 20, 30, 40-year need. That's all you should focus on. But these guys are so dialed in to the speculator mindset, the short-term stuff, and cherry-picking all the negative stuff. It starts to become them. It's like a dark cloud is around them all the time. All you got to do is look at their Twitter feeds and go back in time and look at some of the stuff they're putting out. I don't even think they know the damage it's doing to some of them. So often said, you got to stay positive and optimistic and use your one advantage, which is just simply buying and holding good quality assets. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. I think I've had about 1,000 new subscribers in the last 3 months here, which is fantastic. Thank you very much to all my loyal followers over the last, we're coming up to 10 years now. See you next week.